It's time for the big question right now, in which we tackle a major news story of the day. And the London Mayor Sadiq Khan has set up a new group looking at whether to decriminalise cannabis in the UK. Former Justice Secretary Lord Charlie Faulkner QC will chair the first London Drugs Commission. Mr. Khan described his visit this week to a cannabis dispensary in the US state of California as fascinating. Well, he probably found it was far out. It was probably mind-blowing for the mayor. So is cannabis a harmless bit of fun, a relaxing pastime, no different to having a pint or a cup of tea? Or is it the first rung on the ladder to addiction, crime and a disordered society? And with the potential income a change in the law could bring, could this act as the green levy that we need? We're talking about billions in potential revenue. So that's tonight's big question. Should Britain legalise cannabis? To debate this, I'm delighted to welcome Joseph Robertson, Strategic Director at the Orthodox Conservative Group, who's planning to run a campaign against its legalisation. And arguing for cannabis decriminalisation, popular US radio host and star of the hit programme The Ed Woodson Show, it's Ed Woodson. Edward, welcome to the show. Should we legalise cannabis, do you think?
Of course we should legalise cannabis. In fact, what's taking you guys so long to get to the party? We've got over almost half the states now are legal. There's no reason to have cannabis illegal. It's rather benign. It's people use it all the time. It's been around for centuries, and it is certainly a boom for revenue for the government. So of course it should be legal. Well, why wouldn't it be? It's no different from alcohol consumption or anything else. In fact, I would argue that alcohol consumption is far worse. There's more deaths attributed to alcohol than all other drugs combined. That is a fact.
However, Edward Woodson, two wrongs don't make a right, do they? And marijuana is another mind-altering drug. It makes people sleepy, sluggish, unambitious. We all know that stoners don't get anything done in life.
That's absolutely not true. If you're lazy and you are a laggard before you smoke marijuana, then you will be one afterwards. If you're a motivated person, if you're an intellectual, if you are a business person or whatever it is you do in life, you can certainly smoke marijuana. It doesn't affect your life whatsoever. So however, that is just a canard.
OK, but Edward, I mean, it's still a drug. So do we want to normalise it, for example, you know, daytime use? Do you want people behind the wheel of a heavy goods vehicle, or do you want school teachers ripped to the tits on the wacky-backy?
So do you want people driving drunk? Do you want school teachers drunk during the day from drinking alcohol? I mean, come on. You obviously you regulate it, and just as you do with alcohol. There's absolutely no different. And look, let's be honest here. The war on drugs here in America has been an abject failure. We're going on 50 years now, and it's been an abject failure. It's pretty analogous to prohibition. The only difference is it took us 19 years to figure out that prohibition was a colossal mistake. All that does when you make something illegal is you just open it up to the black market, and that's all you do. And we've seen that time and again.
Joseph Robertson, good to have you on the show. Thanks for the 11th hour booking to contribute to this conversation. Do you think that we should legalise cannabis in this country, Joseph?
No, I don't, because I think there's a number of differences between weed and alcohol. Before we go on to health effects, we're already talking about importing a totally foreign culture into a society that is not equipped to deal with it. And by that, I mean, how do you know if an employee is turning up at work high? It's pretty obvious if they're drunk. But we know in stoner culture, you wake up, you roll out of bed, you roll a joint and you get your day going. And that is the reality of weed culture. So first of all, if you're exposing yourself to a drug which could actually be, warping your sense of time, making you miss out on very sort of mundane tasks and make you sluggish all round, how does your employer know that you're going to be having the same levels of productivity? If you go out and get drunk, it's at night time the next day. If you're on a hangover, everyone knows about it. That's just not the case with weed. And the second thing I'd say is the comparison is always, oh, well, alcoholism is terrible, getting drunk is terrible. Yeah, but having 2 glasses of wine doesn't have that effect. Having a joint does have the same effect.
Your reaction to that?
When's the last time you smoked a joint?
Ed?
When's the last time you smoked a joint?
Well, in my case, probably 1994.
Not bad.
And I've still got a headache.
Come on. It takes away a headache. This is like ridiculous. You guys.
Do you take Ed? Do you take?
Get with the program.
Do you take the point?
Okay? Excuse me?
Yeah, Ed, do you take the point made by our speaker there, Joseph Robertson, that it's far harder to detect marijuana use in citizens than it is to detect alcohol use? If you're near someone that's been drinking, you can smell it on their breath.
Well, there's mouthwash, there's gum. You know, with marijuana, there's something called Visine. So, look, if someone uses alcohol throughout the day, they're a dreadful alcoholic. And there's a lot of people that do that. So the fact is, again, there's no way to tell either way. I mean, in fact,
yeah, I would also say, though, that being an alcoholic during the day is a sign of depression.
Than if they've smoked some weed.
Joseph, aren't we ignoring a massive economic opportunity? The country is broke. The national debt is to the tune of £2.3 trillion. Couldn't we do with a few billion in the coffers by way of a tax on marijuana?
Well, what we've seen in the US and certain states is that with decriminalizing marijuana use completely comes a reduction in the capability of marijuana enjoyers to do certain jobs. They're simply not going to be operationally fit in certain circumstances, and it's going to create chaos in the job market over here. If you legalize marijuana, you're suddenly opening up a culture where everybody could decide to start smoking and then nobody would be fit for the job market. So I don't think we're weighing up both sides of the coin. The other argument, of course, which Ed would make and many people would make is that if you decriminalize, you get a better quality product. There's less psychotic THC-ridden stuff on the black market. I mean, that's just not the case. You've seen in states where it's been decriminalized that the underground market carries on because it's always going to be cheaper than the farmer grade weed that is produced and tariffed by the government as a source of revenue. So I don't think it does anything except excavate the gateway access to using weed and normalizing it as part of the culture.
But Joseph Robertson,
you have no proof whatsoever. What you're saying is your opinion. I want you to cite statistics of what you just said. You're just pulling that out of your hat. You don't have any idea what you're talking about. No, seriously.
I mean, Vox ran an op-ed on that, dude, so...
Joseph, do you care to back up your claims?
Yeah, I was just saying Vox ran an op-ed on exactly the same piece that Ed's talking about. It's quite a widely known fact that in states where it's been decriminalized, the underground market for weed has continued and even risen in proportion.
Can I ask you, Edward, which US state are you based in, and where do you do your radio show and your TV show?
I am in Miami, Florida, the great state of the Free State.
Yeah. So is cannabis, Florida. Is the consumption of cannabis and the purchase of it legal in Florida?
It is become decriminalized. It's not totally legal. We're getting there though.
California has a more liberal policy. Is that right?
There are now bills federally to legalize marijuana federally on the federal level.
What has been, Edward, the experience of California, which I think has completely decriminalized marijuana?
Well, actually, no, it's completely legal. So there are many states wherein recreational marijuana is legal. So it's just like getting cigarettes or getting your pint of Guinness.
And what has been the real world experience in California of this liberal policy, Edward?
It's billions of dollars in revenue. And look, let's be honest here. Conservatives should get behind this. This is a conservative issue. It's all about freedom of choice and the individual rights of people. And that's what this is all about. And why should the government be involved in the decision of an adult to have a pint or a joint or what have you? As long as you're a responsible adult, if it impinges upon your life or your job or your performance, then that's another different thing, and you'll be fired for that. And the marketplace will have it out with you.
Joseph Robertson, we are losing the war on drugs. Get with the programme.
Well, I think there's a very simple response to that. Firstly, I'm not condoning alcoholism. So to say that the equation between a joint and getting drunk is the same thing is totally rubbish. I'm arguing in favour of 2 glasses of wine with a meal. Would you leave a parent in charge with a young child when they're high all day long? Simple question, Ed.
Well, would you leave a child with a parent that drinks all day long? Simple question.
No, because they're an alcoholic. You didn't answer my question.
Okay, there you go. They're an alcoholic. So there's drug dealers, there's drug addicts, there's alcoholics. I mean, that's a silly question. Obviously, the question is...
No, there's drug users. All drug users cannot care for a child. Not everyone who drinks alcohol is an alcoholic.
Well, not everyone that uses drugs is a drug addict either.
No, but Edward, marijuana smokers... Edward, to make the parallel with alcohol, marijuana smokers very often don't wait until 7 or 8 in the evening to light up a giant doobie.
How do you know? That's, what do you mean?
I've lived with stoners, Edward. I've lived with stoners. They get started at lunchtime, mid-afternoon.
College?
Well, that's been my experience.
This is a ridiculous analogy, honestly.
Let's bring our panel in, if I may, gentlemen. We have Kulveer Ranger, former political advisor to the Prime Minister Boris Johnson. We have Lord Taylor of Warwick and broadcaster and comedian Francine Lewis. Francine, should we decriminalise marijuana in the UK? Edward would argue it's just the same as having a cold beer after work.
No, I don't agree with Edward at all. I don't. But I do think for medical benefits, we should legalise it because people that have severe aches and pains like arthritis, MS sufferers, even cancer patients who are going through chemo, I think we should legalise cannabis for those reasons. But I do not think for recreational enjoyment it should be legalised. I really, really don't, because I know stoneheads as well who, like you said, can start from the morning and they can't concentrate properly. They're not with it. It can cause paranoia. Also, is it a gateway to other drug taking? That would be my concern. I mean, I think maybe if we ban smoking altogether, would people be smoking cannabis? I don't know, but I definitely don't think, personally, I agree with Joseph, I don't think we should legalise it for enjoyment, only for medical benefits.
But Lord Taylor of Warwick, I'm concerned that our cops are wasting too much time trying to track down people who are buying or selling marijuana when there are far worse crimes happening on Britain's streets.
For recreation, I'll always say nope to dope. I was a barrister and a judge for a number of years, and I could see in the cases that I dealt with how cannabis, which is Class B, was a gateway to Class A drugs, including cocaine and heroin. Indeed, I had to sentence someone to prison who fell asleep at the wheel whilst driving and high on cannabis, and he smashed into a car and caused serious injury. Now, that is not permissible in my view. And this cannabis, it's not like the 1960s, hippie cannabis, that the hippies used. We're talking about skunk, which causes paranoia, aggression, and severe addiction. This is a complete con from this guy from Florida. He's a dangerous man. Maybe he's high already, I don't know. But it's total nonsense for recreation.
Kulveer, the reality of marijuana use is that the genie The genie is out of... Edward, I'll come back to you in a moment. I'm glad you're enjoying the conversation. But, Corvir, the genie is out of the lamp. We're fighting a losing war, and we should just accept the existence of marijuana in our society, legalise it, make sure that youngsters are smoking the safe stuff, and we can make a few quid along the way.
Yeah, I've got several concerns. Some of my fellow panellists have mentioned already. But, personal experience, as you said, Mark, saw friends at a young age at university who were heavy users of cannabis. And I saw the impact at that crucial point in their lives on their forward career, on their trajectory, on their abilities that haven't been fully developed because of what was happening to them at that point. And also, as Francine said, the gateway to other drugs. I saw that. I saw where cannabis led people. I think it's hugely dangerous. I think decriminalisation and legalisation are two different topics. We have to look at that. But I don't believe, we, unlike in the States, are in a similar place on the war on drugs. Drugs are proliferating. We do need to keep a track on what's going on, but we're not like the States. And there's one final point I'd like to make. We've done a great job in the modern time around removing of smoking from society. Why would we want to bring something back in that would encourage people to smoke?
Joseph Robertson, I'll give you the last word. Edward, if I could come back to you. Another thought is one touched on there by Corvir, which is about the culture of this country. Britain is not as such a marijuana smoking country en masse. We drink tea, we like a pint, and that's about as far as it goes in terms of our favourite stimulants. I'm just wondering, Edward, whether we really want Britain to become a country dominated by marijuana use. For one thing, it smells awful.
Well, I really can't comment on the culture of England because I'm an American. And so I really don't know. But I have to say, going back to what you guys are talking about, gateway, the biggest gateway drug is alcohol. Okay, when people smoke weed, they usually have some cookies and milk and go to bed. When people drink alcohol, they get behind the wheel of the car. They beat up their girlfriends or their wives, and it leads to other drug use. And that's a fact. There are more deaths with alcohol than all drugs combined, and that is a fact. So that's just the reality.
Joseph Robertson, last word on this. Do you think that decriminalisation, legalisation of marijuana is now inevitable?
No, I don't think it's inevitable because I think you can't say that alcohol itself causes alcoholism. You can say other issues lead to alcoholism. You can, however, say that marijuana causes schizophrenia, especially when smoked by adolescents. You can say that marijuana goes on to create temporary memory loss. It also goes on to lead to time warping. You can say many things about marijuana, and we're talking about recreational, non-hard use. We're not talking about, hitting a bong 3 times a day. We're talking about just being embedded in that culture of smoking. So I think that's a total it's a straw man. You can't compare 2 glasses of wine to a joint. You can compare alcoholism. That's a problem. That should be looked at. That should be fixed. Let's take a look at what Poland are doing with tougher alcohol laws on the street. Fine, let's tackle alcoholism all we like, but let's not equate marijuana to that. It's a far more insidious issue. It brings a culture that's totally alienated to a British way of life that we couldn't control, and I think it's opening Pandora's box if we let it in.
My sincere thanks to Joseph Robertson, Strategic Director at the Orthodox Conservative Group, who's planning to run a campaign against its legalisation. And also my sincere thanks to the popular radio host and star of the hit programme, The Edward Woodson Show, Edward Woodson.